Hi all, good afternoon. Thank you for being here. I'm Dagmar, I work for ING and I'm the global lead of the Think Forward initiative. We're here today to talk about a big societal problem which you may recognize. And to get it started, I would first like to do a small exercise. You can sit down, no worries. So could you please raise your hand if you are or know a person who struggles with his finance? Okay, fair amount of people. Me too. Second question, so raise hands if you know or are a person who needs to better plan for retirement. Okay, same amount of people. Point I want to make, I see a lot of hands, and that's exactly why we started the Think Forward initiative. ING, Amazon Web Services and Deloitte, because we want to tackle that problem of people being financially unhealthy. So a bit about the purpose of our initiative. Our purpose is to empower 100 million people to make better financial decisions. We have to believe that society is better off when people make sound financial decisions. I'm sorry, next slide. Our vision is to help people with their financial decision making and also to become the leading financial health platform with a consistent understanding of the struggles of people in Europe. So we partnered with a number of leading organizations and we combine our capabilities in the end to reach our goal of the 100 million people. So we all work on a not-for-profit way and we're all inspired by the opportunity to improve financial decision-making, to make an impact on communities and also to help each other in this way. So this is a bit about the problem. You see a few stages of financial health. So you have 6% of people in Europe who are healthy. We have 44% of people who are somewhat healthy, and there are 42% of people who are struggling, and we have an 8% of people who are unhealthy. So this is just the numbers, but if you connect to those 42%, the number of people in Europe who struggle to make ends meet, that's 215 million people, and that's a very, very big number. On top of that, the other 44%, they can plan for their current needs, but they have difficulties to plan for their future needs. And that's a big problem because those people, they don't have set savings away. They can't plan for their retirement. So that's really a big, big, big issue. And that's why the Think Forward initiative is here. So perhaps a bit on why this is a problem. So a number which is very much striking to me is that 29% of Europeans who have zero savings. None, nil. So imagine if you need to buy a new washing machine and you have no savings. So what do? Well, you go to a debt provider and you get yourself a very expensive debt. So that's a big, big issue. Another one is that correlation with mental health issue. So if you feel financially stressed, there's a correlation with mental health, but also with physical health issues, and also low productivity rates for your employer. So this is a real big problem. So the question here is, what is needed to help people with their financial decision making? So the first is to help people create overview, to help people understand where they are. The second one is to help people develop capabilities, so to help people actually improve their situation. And the third one is to change behavior, and that's the very, very difficult one, because we all know it's good to go to the gym, but we all like Netflix, and we all stick on our couches when we actually should go to the gym to work on our physical health. So that's also why it's so important to understand better how the human brain works and to understand that we all take decisions on a very emotional base, not on a rational base. That's very, very dangerous because finances are so important to a person. So we're organized in 3 distinctive hubs. The first one is our research hub. This is where we conduct fundamental academic research. And I'm quite proud to share that we are able to connect some top-notch academics to our initiative. They're willing to dedicate their time to do research for us. And also, they're very inspired because their research is applied to innovations. But they're also inspired because the research is for a purpose-driven goal. The second one is our accelerator hub. And this is where the insights from research are being translated into new innovations, but also to the startups we help to scale. And the third one is our community hub. And this is where we connect the network of our individuals. It's around 1,700 people from diverse fields. So it's innovators, it's academics, consumer organizations, but also policymakers. And they all dedicate their time and resources to the Think Forward initiative. So some recent examples of our successes. So the first one I would like to highlight is our consumer campaign. So we're doing both B2B and B2C campaigns. This is a B2C campaign with a very quirky animal. It's the ostrich. You all know him because he tends to bury his head in the sand. That's all what we do as humans if it's about our finances. So what we try to do is to create eyeballs with that ostrich campaign, to offer bite-sized help, and in the end, to help people change their behavior. So that bite-sized help is with a little test you can do, and that test indicates what kind of person you are. And then you can subscribe for a 5-week Power Bootcamp. It's an email newsletter, and it actually helps you to change your behavior. So the second one I would like to highlight, and that's also why you're here, it's our growth of the startups, and that's why I like to welcome Joep to stage to explain us a bit more about our growth track. Joep is from Deloitte and leading our accelerator hub.
Thank you very much. Thank you all for being here and spending this hour with us. It's great to see the interest in financial health. Big issue, growing issue, and it's always fun to talk about financial health being in Las Vegas. But yeah, hey, let's start where the problem might be the biggest. And when thinking about that, although we talk about financial health, doesn't mean that we are all very good at it already, because me too spent a bit too much money yesterday in the casino as well. So it is still a big problem. And being in such a surrounding emphasizes how difficult it is to really manage that money. So when we looked into the problem of financial health and basically how to solve it, we immediately found out that there are quite a bit of startups and scale-ups already playing in this field of financial health. So instead of trying to do and solve everything ourselves, we said, hey, let's team up with these startups, with these scale-ups, and help them scale faster, because that will immensely increase our presence and increase the chance on reaching those millions of people. So that's why we started the Growth Track Accelerator. And the Growth Track Accelerator is an accelerator program for startups. It's a program that runs 6 months, and in these 6 months, we really boost their scale, and we help them become more robust, become more successful companies, basically. So there are a couple of elements to this Growth Track. The first thing is, of course, finding the right startups that are a fit with what we try to do, and helping these startups to scale, connecting them with experts, connecting them with corporates to see if we can bring that scale that they're looking for. And we have a clear objective. Every growth track, we want to reach 500,000 consumers extra. The pace in which we do that is we have one track every year. So we help around 10 startups every year to reach that number. And we're not looking for any type of startup, apart from the content of the startup and what they do. We also look at the specific maturity phase, because we want to have the startups in our program that are past that first stage of trying things out, launching for the first time. They need to be a bit beyond the MVP phase, for you are familiar with the MVP. So we are looking for startups that basically have proven their value hypothesis. We know that it's working. We know that there's value in what they do. We know that there's a working business model behind it. Now it's time to scale. And there's 2 reasons why we look specifically for these kind of startups. Reason number 1, there's less risk, because we know it's working already, and we know that people actually improve their health. So if we scale those, we know we're scaling the right thing. And the second thing is that if you look at the companies that we are, ING, Deloitte, AWS, we are specifically good at scaling new things. So there's a complementary set of skills, set of capabilities that we have compared to the startups that we are helping. ING, of course, from a financial perspective, they know a lot about finance, the financial world. They have financial experts that can help the startups. We at Deloitte do a lot in scaling. We have a sense of how strategically position companies, a lot of broad different expertise, market expertise that we can use. And of course, there's AWS, Amazon Web Services, who know everything about the technology needed to scale those companies, the technology they currently use, but also additional technology that could help them make even more impact. So that's what we bring in as the three partners of the Think Forward initiative here on stage today. But it's not about us, of course. It's about the startups. So let me show you an overview of the startups that we've been helping. This is our, what we call the class of 2019. These are the startups that we helped last year, and they recently graduated. So we're all proud of it, and they make good numbers, and we feel a bit like the mom and dad or the coaches of these startups. There are a few of them there. I want to highlight a couple of them. I'm not going to highlight all of them because that will take a lot of time and it will be a boring story. But I want to highlight a couple of them so that you get an impression on what kind of startups we have in our program and also get a bit of a flavor of the diversity of these startups. The first one I'd like to highlight is Two Houses. And Two Houses is one, so Dagmar told you we focus on Europe, but many of these startups are actively on a global scale. Two Houses is pretty big in the USA as well. And what Two Houses does is it helps divorced parents. And divorced parents, well, yeah, you get it. They used to be together and love each other, but apparently something happens and they're kind of fed up with each other and they want to split and each go their own way. Unfortunately, or maybe fortunately for them, but there's one thing that makes it a bit more difficult. It's a kid or more children if they have more. They have to deal with each other in some way or another. In some situations, that's not that much a problem. It's only more like an organizational problem. But in many cases, it is kind of a hassle, and it's often an emotional thing, which makes it difficult to do that in a proper way. So what Two Houses did, they made like a technology mediation platform. And basically, the first version that they have, what it does is that it gives you a planning tool for separated parents. So what you can do, of course, there's a lot of hassle because kids need to be picked up from school, you need to bring them to school, there's soccer practice, play dates, whatever. So they made an online calendar that you very easily can fill in. Hey, I'm having them on Tuesday, I'm off on Wednesday, I can pick them up. Hey, they changed something in the schedule, can you do this, can you do that? And what they've noticed by doing those practical things via that digital solution, it meant that many of these couples get into less fights or less frustrations or stuff like that, which had a big impact on the people itself, but also on the children in that family. They also saw that besides the planning, that managing the financial situation was a big hassle as well, for a couple of reasons. One thing, so you need to deal with both of you having to do some sort of financial stuff. That's one thing. The second thing, what you often see when people get divorced, is that they don't have the same income anymore. So you see what is normal for one parent is totally not normal for another parent, but they don't want to be the lesser parent, so you get into that fight, so they all want to be good for the kid. And you see a fairly amount of people that get in a bit of financial stress because of doing that. So what they also built is like a financial planning tool that parents can say, hey, I think my kid needs new shoes. What do you think about shoes for $60? Would that work? And then the other parent can say yes, no. And then they have that discussion, what often normally ends in a fight or in a stressful discussion, they can have that on the platform. By doing that, again, if you look at the numbers, it helps parents to stay out of financial stress, financial debt, and therefore helps us in making people more financially healthy. That's the Two Houses app. The second we would love to highlight is Earn It. And Earn It is a solution specifically aimed at children. Because there's one big issue still in how we educate our children. Most parents do that by, via giving allowance. There's nothing wrong with that, but we give them physical allowance, like coins and bills. So as a kid, you have a couple of coins, a couple of bills, and it's very easy to understand that if I give one to you, a bill, it's out of my hands, I don't have it anymore, I see it disappear, practically. That's easy to understand. If you do that in a digital setting, it's very difficult for us, our brain, to understand that that number on that bank account, if that changes a bit, that I really have less money and that I can do less stuff. That's requires a bit of a different mindset. So what's happening with the kids nowadays, they learn physical money, they turn 14, some 12, some 15, they get their digital bank account or the normal bank account. It's all digital, and then they get into financial trouble because they have no idea to deal with that. Now, what the Earn It guys and girls do is they came up with a solution, a banking app for kids, where they immediately, from the age of around 4, 5, 6, learn how to deal with digital money. It's having a huge impact. And what I really like about what they do, so that's one element of what they do. The second element what they do is they teach the kids the skills that you need for financial management. And those skills are not the rational skills of understanding financial products. That's part of it, but what's really important when managing your finance is learning the right capabilities like discipline in not spending everything right at this moment. So more characterize like skills that you need to learn, and that's where Earn It spends a lot of time and effort in to do that. The third one that I want to highlight, it's called Super, and the reason why I think that one is interesting is that what Dagmar told us, that we start with the research and then use this research in the innovation. That's exactly what we did with Super. So let me start with a movie, and then I'll explain why this is such an interesting startup.
Your naturally sculpted body is a finely tuned attractiveness machine, a paragon to be admired and emulated. No? If you're like most of us, staying fit takes a bit of effort and commitment. It's about taking those small steps. Exercise a bit more often, reduce stress, eat right. We all want to be better about it, but it's not always so easy. Staying financially healthy isn't all that different. Track your income, keep an eye on your spending. It's the right thing to do, even if life doesn't always cooperate. That's why it's important to find the right tool for your finances, like Super. Super connects to all of your accounts to let you know when your money comes in and how it goes out. Super categorizes your purchases so you can understand your spending habits, and you'll get a real-time score of your financial health. You might be surprised at the rewards you'll see, all without breaking a sweat or dealing with these people. Power your personal finances with Super. It's financial fitness for everyone. Download the app today.
Cool. So we all recognize that planning to go to the gym and don't do it. There's actually a reason why we find that so difficult. And that's the fundamental of how our brain works, because our brain values short-term more over long-term. And our brain is more short-term focused than long-term focused. Has to do something with how we are hardwired like millions of years ago. When you're being chased by a tiger, you don't have time to think, you need to run. Bam. If you have very much trouble in surviving on the short term, there's no use in thinking long term. We are looking for instant gratification, is what it's always called. The problem with financial management, and especially with saving, things like saving, investing, it hurts right now. I want to have money, and I need to set money apart for something that I need later. But at this moment, it hurts a bit. So I miss that instant gratification. What these guys did is you saw that in the movie, you saw that financial fit score that they have. Well, they came up with this clever thing, and we based it on research. This clever thing is that by having people do something now and immediately see that reflected in that health meter, you kind of create that instant gratification because, hey, you set $10 apart and immediately, boom, 2 points higher in the health score. Feels good. So people still get that instant gratification feeling. And you actually see, because we can measure all that stuff, or Super can, so you actually see that people become more wealthy or more financially healthy because we see that the number of euros, in this case, in their bank account is growing. So a great example on how we help these startups to be more impactful. So a bit more on how does that program look like, where we help them through. So the starters show up after a thorough selection, and then we have a 6-month program. And what we do is, so we have a very tailored program to exactly those things that the startup scale-ups need in our program. It's a 6-month program, and every month we tackle one problem. So what we've learned with these startups that are about to scale is that they often lack a clear strategic positioning and a clear growth strategy. Reason for that, there are many reasons, but one of the things is if you look at the innovation methodology, things like Lean Startup, it's very much focused on finding that problem-solution fit, testing it, looking at customers, but there's a bit of a wide spot. They don't spend that much time on how does your solution compare to competition. And what happens if a startup becomes successful, becomes a scale-up, you see other people, other companies copying it. Other startup scale-ups that enter the market, or incumbents that are start doing the same thing. So what we do is we help them with the strategic positioning, and basically we help them with the question, what if another company comes in, either an incumbent that has a lot of clients already, or a totally new startup with maybe even more money? How do you create a competitive position that is defendable even in such a situation? That's the first month. The second month, we look at technology and legal challenges. We got Adam from AWS here, so he will tell everything about how we help the startups with the technology part. And then month 3, we focus on sales strategy, growth hacking, and the execution of sales. So we have, with these companies, a lot of B2B sales experience, so we help them with that. We have a lot of B2C sales experience, of course, as well, so we help them with that. And then the 4th month, that's that specific element where we look at all the nudging things and the gamification things to help the startups be more effective and get more clients in. So this is where we fuel them with all those research insights that we just talked about. Basically, then 2 things happen. One is that you see that they can boost their conversion rate. So basically, more clients sign up and more clients stay. So also retention is improved. And the second thing, what you see is that for those people in their solution, they manage to nudge them better in the right direction and have them do the right stuff that help them financially. The 5th month is the last content month, and then we look at scaling the organization itself. Because what you often see is when you start your startup, it's a group of friends, right? You're at 5 and you're in the same room and it's an adventure. But then you grow your company to, let's say, 100, 150, maybe even more people. And then it's not a band of brothers anymore. So you need to come up with all these things like governance, processes. You need to have a budget structure, maybe decision-making structure, all those kind of things. So that's what we help them with in the last month. And then month 6, demo day, we have a big event that we bring the whole network together to help them scale. And what we've learned, and that's an important thing, of course, that it seems to work. So what we see is that the startups, they improve their capability. From this group, we see that 4 of them managed to successfully implement these nudge features, and then you immediately see a huge increase and a huge growth. So PRB, one of the startups, managed to get 400% additional growth. So they were already growing, but next to that growth, 400% extra. Huge number. Impact on consumers, of course, and you see that all of the startups show growth. So the 156% extra downloads and 196% extra users, that is the minimum. So this was the minimum from all of these startups. So the rest is even higher than that 196%. Brings us a step closer to the 100 million that we're aiming to achieve. And of course, AWS has a crucial role in this because many of these solutions, in fact all of these solutions, have a very strong technology component. So we help them by improving their technology. But before I'm going to explain all the things that we do on the technical side, I give the floor to Adam, who can share everything about that.
Thank you, Archie. So, think forward. When I met Dagmar and Joep, it was almost a year ago, just over a year ago, they told me that they wanted to try and find 100 million people and try and influence them to start making better financial decisions. And they want to do that with startups. So first of all, it kind of blew me away, the goal. And I thought, this is a good, think big thing to do. So I thought about what's the value AWS can bring. Of course, we're in the enterprise space, but we're also working a lot with startups. So there was really sort of three main areas we defined that where AWS could really bring value to this. So it starts with basically the initial selection, finding the startups, bringing them into the program, and then really to be a mentor, a sort of big brother for these startups. I brought on board our startup team, who have extensive experience in running startups. Most of them have actually been involved or run their own startups in the past. So that really helped to give guidance to the startups, help them to define their strategy or to refine their strategy, but also to help them grow. So be able to look at how they can get higher up in the Google rankings, all sorts of activities to be able to get hold of new customers. We also connected them into our ecosystem with account managers. So I don't know if any of you are startups in the room here, but there's a huge network of account managers who work with all enterprise customers, and they can help you to get onto the table and to have meetings. So we brought that to the program. On a technology side, of course, I would say that's the easier one. So I brought on board our solution architects, because quite often startups, they do their thing, they start building, they make their app, start building their business, but they don't realize the organizations behind them that can support them. So we set up the technology days where startups could come in, and we could run these what we call well-architected reviews together with the solution architects. And that focused on three main things. So one is really looking at the architecture, looking at what the startups are trying to achieve and see if they've got an optimized architecture. But also looking at the cost, see if there's any areas where we can improve to get the bill down, but also teaching about new tools, Cost Explorer, how they can really get more value out of the platform from a cost perspective. And the third part is really trying to identify what do they want to do. So what's the next step? What do they see as the new value-add services they want to bring into the market? So we started looking in the portfolio, and you see pretty quickly we started getting into the area of artificial intelligence and machine learning. So I'll explain in one or two examples how we handled that. But those are areas which the startups had tended not to sort of look too much into. But they got a lot of value in terms of having a peer from a solution architecture perspective who can help to look for new services, new businesses they could bring into the market. And last but not least, brought a package together to help the startups from a financial perspective. So maybe some of you are aware of the program called AWS Activate. So we brought this program into the initiative where startups can get anywhere between $5,000 but up to $100,000 in funding, which really helps them from a cost perspective, but also they could use that money to invest into new services and to try new things. So that was really a value add for the startups there. So these are a few sort of testimonials from some of the startups, and if you look at it, it's very much sort of on the infrastructure database level. But certainly the feedback we got from the startups, because I was quite surprised when we did the initial selection to discover that 8 out of the 9 startups were already running on AWS in some sort of form. So if you look on the computing side, they really appreciate the fact that they could get started with VMs quite quickly, start building their apps, start doing something, and from there start scaling out. But also in terms of agility, they were able to try out new services, be able to try out new applications, but shut them down if it's not working for them, or be able to save money by shutting all their environments down the weekends, that sort of thing. On the database level, they really like the fact that they could just start using the databases from the get-go, and the databases could scale up and down according to their needs, as opposed to having to invest everything up front. And on the storage side, with Amazon S3, certainly with some of the startups, they'd made the initial steps to getting from 0 to 500 to 1,000, but up to 10,000 customers on their application. But they really wanted to scale up to getting to the millions, and they felt that the storage layer was certainly helping them to do that in an affordable way. But like I said, I think one of the real value adds from the technical perspective is the architecture and the support we could provide the startups. So if you're not in touch with your solution architects at AWS and you're working with AWS, I suggest you get hold of them because they can really add value to your business. So just maybe zooming into 2 startups that we helped and a few use cases here. So the first one on the right-hand side is Peertopeer. So that's a Dutch company who are quite famous in the Netherlands. They do peer-to-peer lending. So that means basically, as a customer, if you look in your house, you've probably got all sorts of devices and lawnmowers and hair dryers and things that you perhaps only use a certain amount, say a couple of days a year or a couple of weeks a year. And they have basically an online lending platform where you can put anything in your house onto this platform, and people can rent it for a few hours to a couple of days. And that's very much in a sort of the sharing culture industry that we're setting up in the Netherlands. Now, Peertopeer was, they were looking to see how they could make it a more personal experience, so they started looking into Amazon Personalize to start seeing if they could make a much more individual app. So you could look at, for example, what are the behaviors of some of your customers, and would there be a suitable recommendation you could give? Then looking at Bill Butler. Bill Butler is based in the UK, and it's basically a single pane of glass for all your utility bills. So as a customer there, you can bring all your gas, electricity bills all together into one app. And Bill Butler really looks at your transactions and sees how can they recommend to help you to save money. So it could be a question of behaving in a different way, or it could also be a case that you'll be recommended to perhaps switch to another gas provider, another electricity provider. And they were also looking to scale, not only to the first 10,000, but also get to the million. And we really helped them to look at their architecture, to look at their databases, and see how we could help them to achieve those figures. So if you look at what we've achieved so far, we've now reached 20 million after the last couple of years of working together, which is a fantastic result. And we're moving fast towards the 100 million. If you look at the result for the startups, which is what we're really trying to achieve, on average, the startups grew by 200% during the 6-month period. So they really got a lot of value there in terms of getting new customers, new business, exploring new markets, but also using the ecosystem of the Think Forward initiative to make new contacts and to get into new areas of business. And 50% of the startups also implemented some sort of new feature or some sort of new service based on this. So it also helped them to think about their business, think about the services they're providing, and to explore new areas. Now, thank you very much. I think now Gordon Shields from Deloitte is going to come and join us and ask a few questions.
Thank you. I'm going to be your facilitator here for the next few minutes. And the good news is it's not just me that's going to ask the questions, because I've got a handy helper over here that's going to run around with a microphone and take your questions. Think Forward, what a great initiative. And can you think of a bigger audacious goal than trying to affect 100 million people in terms of the financial well-being? Personally, perhaps the best decision I just made is I brought my wallet up on stage. The guy behind me looked a little dodgy. So we'll make sure that nothing happens there. And then, of course, that app that was referred to in terms of Zuper, I understand will help you when you're at the crap tables and you're just about to make that bet. It'll come out with a notification. So you might want to think about downloading that as well in terms of the next couple of days. In terms of questions, again, great initiative. It's amazing how many people that we've impacted so far. And you talk about combining research and insight to drive innovation. Maybe you can give us an example of something that's insightful about that.
So research, there's a lot of value in research, but there's one issue with research, and that's if you're in a shop and you want to buy something, there's not a person in the world that's going to read like thousands of academic papers. You're not going to read academic papers anyway, or at least not that amount. So how do we get these insights to people? That's the big issue, because there's value there, but it's not in the hands of the people. So let me give you an example. So one of the things that the research people found out, academics, is that if we start something, like just me as a person, I like to complete that task. It's apparently a natural thing. It's also with gaming, when we game and we want to go to the next level, and we want to finish that level. We want to complete things. So if you started a buying journey, you want to complete that whole journey until that you actually bought the thing. Whether you need it or not, it doesn't really matter. If you disrupt that journey in some way, people get distracted and start do other things. They never come back to that journey, or at least they calculated it. Around 35% doesn't come back. So we said, hey, this is nice, but now what do we do with it? So that's where AWS also come in. So we build a browser plugin that you have to install once, but then it recognizes as soon as you're on a web shop. So you go on a web shop and then you get this pop-up and it says, hey Gordon, we know you were saving for a holiday in Spain. Are you sure you want to spend money on this website? And then you actively have to decide yes or no. And then you, again, around 30% decides not to continue that journey. So that's how we use such a research insight and make it practical for people.
That's very practical. And so when you think about the collaboration here between these three organizations, Deloitte, AWS, and ING, what does ING get out of this collaboration?
Yeah, perhaps I can answer that question since I'm working for ING. There's a very strong link with the global sustainability direction of ING, where we're focusing both on climate action to achieve the climate goals we all know from the Paris alignment, but also on financial health. So we also contribute to financial healthy society. And we do that not only for our own ING customers, but also for society, because we feel that a financial healthy society is a better society. And with that, we contribute to the SDGs, specifically the SDG 8, economic growth for the planet. So that's the role of ING here, to also combine all of our knowledge about managing money, but also the knowledge we have as innovators combined with the capabilities of other partners to actually help people improve their financial decision making. So that's why ING is in the game here.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you. And you had mentioned some of the statistics, and it looks like you're on your way, as I said, to 100 million. But can you share with me what is the growth, and how do some of the folks or other parts of the community get involved in this program?
Yeah, let me also take that one. So currently we reached 20 million people with our insights via content, articles, our innovations. So we're nicely on our way, not there yet. And we have a B2B approach where the insights are being used by the partners in our Think Forward Initiative partnership. So for example, our ING business units use the insights to talk to their customers. That's a great asset because so we can reach a lot of people. But we're also piloting with our own B2C approach with Ostrich campaign to see if we can reach other people with our insights and solutions, but also via Deloitte and AWS to really activate people to use the startups, because there it's about relevance. So reach is a nice thing, but it's about relevance. So if people use a certain solution, it's relevant to them. And ultimately, the most important task or challenge is to actually get people change their behavior. And that's also the difficult part in impact measurement. So we can reach relevant, we can measure relevance, we can measure reach, but how to measure the improvement a person makes in financial health. So that's why we try to set up financial health measurement also within ING to combine self-observed and reported data to understand better where the pain points are and to help them with interventions to improve their financial health.
So maybe can I add to that? Because this is all true, but on the high level. So what we do. So if you look at the individuals, so we look at this is a story of a guy that I interviewed, because I'm on the innovation side, so we do a lot of customer research and we interview a lot of people. And we interviewed him about financial health and all the stress and the struggle that he had. And we didn't meet him up front, but it was definitely a guy who had a lot of financial stress, because you could see in the way he talked about, he cramped up and muscle, so you saw the stress in that whole financial thing. And we talked a bit about that and why it was such a problem, and he had debt and all those kind of things. But it became a more personal conversation. Then we talked about his dreams. So what are your dreams? And I had no idea, but that question hit him. And it was like silent for maybe 10, 20 seconds. And you saw him getting even more sweaty. And at a certain moment, there were tears in his eyes. So I paused for a while, and he said, I want to take my big dream, with tears in his eyes, his voice broke. My big dream is to be able to take singing classes. And that struck me, like a fairly small dream, right? Singing classes. He didn't want to be like a big singer and get rich. No, just singing classes once a week. It struck me for two reasons. One, that this problem is so big that he didn't have that room to follow a dream. But what I've noticed, because I talked more with him for why is this so personal and so emotional for you, and he said basically he was so much in financial stress that he didn't not only was able to achieve his dream, but he basically didn't allow himself to even think about it because there was so much financial stress. And that's, for me, that's the thing that the Think Forward initiative does very well, and what we are doing this for, to help people be able to dream again and achieve their dreams.
If we, Adam, from an AWS perspective, a great partner here, and maybe you can talk a little bit about the favorite moment from your perspective in the past year in terms of working with one of the startups here.
So I think in terms of favorite moment, one was seeing when we did the selection day, all the enthusiasm, the energy that the startups brought. And certainly with the new round we've just started a couple of weeks ago, to see how they're all connecting together and already starting to sort of plan world domination together. But I think what I really liked is when it came to the technology day, even though they were a startup, even though they're living sometimes day by day as a startup organization, they were really spot on the technology. They knew exactly what they'd done, and they knew where they wanted to go. They just need a little bit of a guiding hand. And it was good to be able to bring the resources, to be able to bring the architects to the table, and to help them to take that next step. And it was something they hadn't been aware of in the past. So, like I said, if you don't know your solution architect as an AWS customer, it's good to reach out and find out because they can really help you.
Well, I'd like to see if the audience has a question. And don't be shy. Surely there must be one out there. Oh, gentleman there.
Thanks. Hi. Can you give us a bit more detail about how you select the fintechs that you work with or the startups you work with?
Yeah, so it's very important that they, of course, match our purpose, helping people to make better financial decisions and become more financially healthy. And we actively scout them. So we scout global for startups, and then we look at the best matches, and we invite them for a selection day. We use a couple of criteria. So the first criteria is that purpose. The second criteria is that they need to have that 10,000 users and a proven business model. Then we look at the quality of the solution, and the fourth element is the quality of the team. So those are the four main things that we look at.
Other questions? We have one over here. And while we're getting the mic over to this person, I might just ask another question here in terms of, when you look at the program from the startup perspective, there's obviously the benefit of financial growth, but are there other benefits for the startups that you're experiencing in the program?
There are a lot of benefits. Okay. So what I hear a couple of things. So there's the growth element, but the second thing that I get as a lot of feedback from the startups is that they really like the network that they create, because we as the three companies, AWS, ING, and Deloitte, we have a huge network, locally but also globally. So especially the startups that are B2B, they love it that we can connect them to all the companies that we work with. AWS and Deloitte, we have huge B2B clients. So if they say, hey, we want to scale our solution by working with Barclays, we can immediately connect them with Barclays, for example. But we need to help them to integrate as well, which then helps that we have AWS because they know all the tech part of it. So that's a second big valuable thing that they get out of this.
The networking piece is huge. Let's go over here to the question in the front row.
Hi. 100 million is obviously very ambitious, but then what? After the 100 million, then what are you going to do? Are you taking this initiative into other regions, or?
Yeah, that's a very good question. Indeed, 100 million is a BHAG for us, but if we achieve it, what then? So we currently focus on Europe as a geography because we are also some sort of a corporate startup within our organizations. We now have a focus in the help we offer on European people. But if we prove that this structure is working so that we can be a coalition of the willing, so that we can combine research with innovation and a very strong community, then we're super much open to open up also for other parts of the world. But to start, well, smallish in Europe, that's our first ambition. And if that's a proven success, then we're very open to further scale. And on that note, perhaps also good to mention that we're now moving towards a foundation, so separate legal entity, to be super sure that our initiative is considered a purpose-driven initiative and not some sort of profit-driven something our organizations strive for. So if we are a foundation, then we can also open up for other partners, knowledge partners, but also impact foundations to help us scale our impact. So thank you for the question. And sorry, perhaps also to add to the relevance of the startups, I know they really like the connection with research. So that's the very best rewarded part of the Grow program, where they can interact with our research hub, but also with all the academics in our networks, because it's of great value to them to have those little nudges. And it's also valuable for the academics because they can really test their academic insights with real startups. So it's a very shared. Yeah, sorry.
Well, that sounds like a better answer.
Yeah, I'm aware of that.
So sometimes, you hear the saying, you can bring the horse to water, but the horse doesn't always drink. And so what's the impact in terms of the people? Are they really receptive to this? Are they picking it up?
Yeah, that's perhaps a bit on the relevance part.
Yes.
And that's why I'm at least so proud of the improvement we've shown in the users of the startups. So if they use it, it's relevant to them. But indeed, the big tricky question is, so is it helping them or not? Because recent research also found out that if people know what they can spend, so if they very carefully budgeted their expenses and they know I have a 200 euro to spend, they will spend 200 euro. So that's also contradictional research to, hey, it's good to have the overview. Yeah.
Right. Excellent. And Dagmar, back to you for a second. So, and what's the impact inside ING when you talk to your colleagues about this program? Again, huge, audacious goal here in terms of what we're trying to accomplish in Europe.
Yeah, it's actually every colleague I talk to is inspired by our purpose and is really willing to contribute one way or another. So if I talk about the local business units we have, so it's very close to the heart of their CEOs, their sustainability managers, but also their content people, because the insights we provide them with are super relevant for them to also achieve their purpose and impact goals towards their customers. So what we've learned is that people aren't aware enough yet about the initiative. So that's also the phase we're now in, to make sure to make more rumor about the initiative. So on stages like this, but also within our organizations, in order to welcome as much people as possible to join our community of individuals to, well, jointly join forces to achieve our mission.
Right.
Yeah.
Great. Another question from the audience, perhaps. Oh, we've got one here right in the front row. We're going to keep our runner in good shape here today.
For you.
I'm interested to learn, how did you guys get started with this in terms of, how did your leadership, where did it start? How much support do you get from your own leadership in each individual organization? And what are some of the sort of challenges or boundaries that you draw when you think of, self-benefit in terms of ING getting benefit or Deloitte getting benefit versus actually as a collective group being able to, push this sort of human initiative forward?
Yeah.
Great question. Who wants to take that one?
Yeah, me again, sorry.
You started it.
I started it. I'm the founding mother of the initiative. I started it because I go quite a long while back within ING, so my network is quite broad. And when Ralph Hamers, our current CEO, took over from Jan Homme, our previous CEO, he created a new purpose for ING, empower people to stay a step ahead in life and in business. It's a great purpose, but it lacked about proof points. So I was, at that moment, employed as one of his strategic advisors. And he asked me, hey, Dagmar, okay, but how can we prove that we're currently working on this purpose? So I told him, hey, Ralph, I see some things happening. So there's the behavior aspect of people. So we are a bank, we know money best. People with irresponsible behavior, it's about emotion, not about ratio. It's about technology, so technology should make it easy for people to make financial decisions, but to a lot of people it's super overwhelming. It's about the role people get more and more, so withdrawing governments. So all those combined with also within ING, the silos between research and innovation made me suggest to Ralph, hey, let us start an initiative, not as a bank alone, because we currently were in the big financial crisis with a lot of negative association to a bank. So he challenged me to prove that I was able to combine forces within ING between research and innovation, but not only within ING, to also find like-minded organizations to build that coalition of the willing and to join forces. So the first assignment was actually, okay, prove the concept and prove that you are able to find other like-minded organizations, which Deloitte, AWS, and the other partners joined at that moment. The second challenge or step in the evolution was, okay, so you proved that you can make the structure work, you proved that you were able to combine forces, but now let's step out from our expert bubble. So let's prove that you can make an actual impact to the consumer. So that's actually the phase we're now in at. And the next challenge we have in front of us is to scale our impact, but also to see if we can become a more self-sustainable initiative, because obviously it really helps if Ralph Hamers is behind it, if your executives are behind it. And from ING's perspective and from Ralph's perspective, it's very close to his personally, and it's also a very strong connection to the purpose of ING. So that's also, if we invite new partners to join, the one and the first important requirement is that the purpose of the organization matches very closely with the purpose of the initiative. Else it's, well, not a sincere consideration to join the initiative. So that's in our selection committee, one of the most important criteria.
Yeah, but because sometimes it has, well, at the moment not, but it has been a struggle. Not necessarily a struggle, but your question was also how do you balance the benefits? And what has happened is that we had a partner who was more interested in basically doing business with the partners than in that goal of achieving 100 million Europeans. So we learned from that, hey, to be very firm, you got to be committed to the objective. And you're not going to win any other money out of it. So ING is also a client for Deloitte. We made the decision we're gonna go full in for that 100 million, not to do any business. So it's also not budgeted from marketing money or account money. We're going to find a different way to do it to make sure that we are very strict about it. And in general, it's at least in practice, it's making sure that you find the right people within the organization. So within Deloitte, the right people that are really passionate about this goal, and then things will flow.
Good question. I've got one in the second row. Wow, the questions are flowing now. And I've got one over there.
I got it first, but thanks. First of all, thanks for the initiative. I feel like a lot of the topics we're talking about in this conference about AI potentially are around how we use AI to make people spend more money. But you guys are sort of doing the opposite here. And if you got to the point where we can counter and have an overall balance, that'd be very respected. My question is, a lot of the initiative we talk about seems to be tied to the consumer changing habits. That's one entry, right? Have you thought about, from a regulatory or technology aspect, if we can also do some work? I'm not saying do like GDPR, like regulation to say you can only advertise towards people. You can treat that as sort of a discrimination as well. But you know what I'm saying? Have you thought about putting different entrance points to influence the behavior? Thanks.
And I would just add before we answer that it obviously begs the question of what is the regulator or the government's involvement, if anything, in this program?
Yeah, let me first start to answer that one and perhaps hand over to Joep about the technology lever. So regulators are also part of our community. So we invite them for our annual summit, we invite them for roundtables to discuss also with other community members the issues we see. And what we hope to do, and it's, I mean, again, we're a small team, so regulators and policy influencing is also part of our hopes for the future. And within ING, we have a quite firm department managing all those governmental relations. And that's how I try to weave in all the insights we get from our initiative into those conversations. So that's how we hope to at least influence on that level the insights we collect. And technology, I feel that's the Quinn example. And I would love to work. I met a guy from Coolblue in the plane, and I said to him, it would be awesome. I mean, if we can implement the Quinn app, so the plugin you were telling about, to see if Coolblue is really intentional about, hey, are we willing to offer this to our customers? So then there's indeed the clash between business profit, but also the purpose part of an organization like Coolblue. I'm not sure if
and
I can...
Coolblue is a online web...
a Dutch one, sorry.
Like an Amazon kind of web store. Yeah, and I don't know if you have any ideas about technology, but the thing that I'm dreaming of still, we're not there yet, is that everything is becoming API-based. So what we would love to do in the future is develop technology that all other people, organizations, corporates can use to help people. So let me give you an example. In our next batch, that's just starting at the beginning of this year, we have a company that is able to do an analysis based on more like the psychoanalytical profile of a person. So not am I able to repay a loan, but am I willing to, and am I the kind of person that pays back loans? Apparently they can measure that. And they do it in a technology way. So what I would love to do is put that out in the world, and everybody that wants to use it can use that API. That's kind of the technology that we're thinking of. If you have any other ideas or thoughts on how we can use it, I'd love to hear it, because we're always open for new ideas.
And we'll take that one after the session, because I do want to come back to you, Adam, in terms of the question that we got here out of the first or second row in terms of here we are at the AWS conference, and so take me through the thought process with AWS in terms of joining this initiative, and what did you have to do in order to get people on side, and what do you have to do on an ongoing basis to keep them on side?
Yeah, so I think there's two principles here. One is, of course, our underlying leadership principle, which is customer obsession. So working with ING and Deloitte, when I heard about this initiative, first of all, I thought, why haven't I heard about this before? But when I heard about what they were trying to do, I really felt this was something where we could really bring impact to. So it was really about focusing on what are the goals that ING and Deloitte are trying to achieve, but also feeling personally connected to that and wanting to be a part of this and to make it into a partnership. I'd say it's to get awareness in this. I mean, it's something, I think the startup element also helped a lot, because obviously we have a lot of focus on startups, and there's a massive organization supporting startups. But it was something that also, when you first explain it, most people say, what are you trying to do? You're trying to stop people from spending money? But actually, when you think about the long-term benefits and the impact, people start realizing, hey, this is a positive thing to do. This is having a positive impact on society. So I haven't had anyone really who sort of said, this is a crazy thing to do. It's all been very supportive. Everyone's wanting to help and to see how we can help make a difference. Yeah.
So we'll do one last question, because I know people start looking at their watches pretty carefully in terms of the next session they have to make. Oh, we've got a dead mic. We'll fix that mic.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
It's a two-part question. Question number one is how is the adoption based on region for this initiative within Europe? The second question is there any cultural aspects was taken into consideration for your program?
Who wants to take that one?
I couldn't hear the...
So can you repeat the first question, Andy?
The question number one is, how is the adoption within the European Union? The countries.
How was that?
The adoption of the application.
Yeah, it gets back to the earlier question around, are people really using this in terms of the tools that you're providing? And then the second question?
Was any cultural aspects was taken into consideration? Because
No, that's a good question, yeah.
Yeah.
That's you.
So the adoption is it differs a bit per startup. But, so we select startups that already have at least 10,000 users, so we know that it's working, and then we try to scale it as fast as possible. And we use the growth hacking methodology for that, and that's really working. So we managed to get a huge adoption improvement of all these startups that we help, and it differs a bit per startup. So some have like 200% additional growth, and the biggest one had like 400% additional growth. So that's working pretty well. And we do take cultural differences into account in two ways, or three ways actually. So there's like the cultural thing of how do people, how do you call it, feel about things like debt. Because if you look in the UK, that's totally different than, for example, Germany. Also in Germany, everybody uses cash, or a lot of people use cash still. And in many other countries like the Nordics of Europe, Sweden, Denmark, it's all digital. So we take these elements into account in our solution. And then there's the legislation part. So that's not really cultural differences, but still differ per country. So the example that you gave of Bill Butler that can automatically switch someone's energy provider. In some countries that can be done very easily. In some countries that's legally not allowed. It needs to have to be done by the person itself. So we differ a bit for that.
So at this time, we're out of time. I appreciate the questions. Again, what a great initiative in terms of what they're trying to accomplish here. Hopefully you can join me in thanking our three speakers here today.